everyone, and welcome to episode number 266 of the Canadian Football Countdown, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network and the Alternative Football Network. Ryan and Adam here with you this evening to preview Week 14 in the CFL. Big weekend, a lot of rematches from Labor Day, which was a fantastic weekend of football there. We've got a Saturday triple header. We've got our first game on CTV this weekend as well. Lots to talk about here in the CFL community, and we made it live. It took about 13 tries to click the start stream button because something was going wrong there, but eventually we got it, and who knows how many tries it'll take to hit stop stream when we have dead air at the end. But nonetheless, we're here, and we're excited to talk about some CFL football here tonight. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know what? I just the delay of podcast. I don't know if that's an official penalty or anything, but Ryan has to just move 5 yards back from the screen. I guess. I don't know how that works. He said he moved 5 yards ahead. Okay. Anyways, nevertheless, I'm doing good. A little bit of rain last night, so harvest is at a little bit of a standstill, but we'll be going again tomorrow. Hopefully everything goes well, and we can get some acres off. And of course, lots to listen to on the radio while combining. So,
yeah, busy time of year, sports wise and stuff like that too, right? I hear, I hear there's other football related things going on tonight. I don't know. I think we're the number one thing in the football world going on tonight, but here we are. Nonetheless, yes, NFL kickoff tonight. And along with that, we had bonus content yesterday. We had our NFL fantasy draft that we streamed and posted on the podcast feeds. So if that's something you're interested in, check that out from yesterday. A great 8-round or 18, 15-round fantasy draft special here from the CFC crew and members of our Discord community. So go and check that out. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Yesterday evening. I love getting to host those shows, as chaotic as they are sometimes with the draft podcasts. So check that out. And while you're at it, join the Discord. Maybe get in on one of those next year, or just join us for CFL, NFL, and whatever chatter going on there. Link is in the episode description. It's free to join us. We've had a couple new members join us this week. So hello to anybody tuning in that is a new member of the community there. Hello to anybody tuning in live with us tonight as well, as we are live thanks to our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. You can learn more about them at GameTimeTV.ca or Facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. And before we go any further, we do want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Trey is in the chat tonight, says he misses one episode and the whole thing crashes. Yeah, pretty much. If you missed the announcement in the Discord, Trey will be away from the podcast for the next several weeks, taking care of some personal matters. So unclear at this point when you'll see Trey back here on camera on Thursday nights, but we hope to have him back soon and wish him all the best in the meantime, and happy to see him hop in and out of the chat here as well. Trey, we miss you. I guess I have to argue that home field advantage isn't a thing now. Like, I don't know. Do you want to drink?
No. I mean, I'm glad to argue this week that home field advantage means absolutely nothing. So means totally nothing. It doesn't affect any situation whatsoever in a certain game on Saturday this week.
Oh yeah. Just like it didn't. I mean, it didn't on Sunday last week, right?
Fair. We'll get to this later. Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, we'll get to this in a little bit.
Yeah, we've got some stuff to settle here tonight. Lots of fun topics as we talk about each of these CFL games. Some big news around the CFL community this week as well that we'll talk about here as we go through each of the games. Some shocking transactions for sure. But I think I'm ready to dive right into the first game here if you are, Adam, and let's hop into it and talk about the The BC Lions visiting the Montreal Alouettes. The Alouettes coming off the bye over the Labor Day weekend. The BC Lions had a nice bounce back win in touchdown Pacific. Had to think of my oceans for a second there, but I think I got the right one. Over in Victoria, Lions with the big win over the Ottawa Redblacks in that one. What's the biggest storyline? Let's start on the BC side for you here in this game.
Yeah, for sure. I think it was seeing the performance last week of Nathan Rourke. It looked like, at least for a first half, came back and was definitely looking like Nathan Rourke of old. Maybe not as much running as I used to remember out of Nathan Rourke. I know he did run a little bit back in the day. This one here, not so much. But he does still possess the throwing passing ability. I think he had 3 touchdown passes before the first half was done. Looked really, really good against a fairly decent Ottawa Redblacks defense this year. Second half, well, I don't know if the wheels came off a little bit. Did get another touchdown. But I think the more thing was he did a pretty good job of just kind of controlling the ball and moved on from there. That's what I'm going to be watching for, namely to see if Nathan Rourke now can, okay, you did it against the Ottawa Redblacks. Good job. Now you're taking on the league-leading Montreal Alouettes. They're 10-1 right now. They're one of the strongest teams in the league. Period. Undisputed number 1 in any power rankings, except for Trey's if he goes crazy. But nevertheless, most times, like I said, you got the Alouettes now. Let's see what Nathan Rourke does against a very, very good Montreal defense and front line.
Yeah, great bounce back game for Rourke. You mentioned that first half looking explosive in that one. Of course, the big moment on everybody's mind is the halftime interview with Farhan from Nathan Rourke, where Farhan starts listing off these stats, which were to the tune of, his final stats on the night were 21 of 33, 25, 3 touchdowns and a pick, and then 29 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Most of that coming in the first half. Very impressive start to the game for him. Farhan starts listing off the stats, and Rourke says, all I care about is we're up 31-6. Thanks, Farhan. Pats him on the shoulder and runs off to the locker room. And TSN is flustered. They cut to commercial break, and then like half a second later, it's back to the studio because they were like, wait, we weren't supposed to go to commercial break quite yet. It was a moment they weren't prepped for. It's caused quite the storm this week. Where do you stand on the whole topic? I know you put the poll out in the Discord. Was Rourke in the wrong here, or was he in the right?
I get it. The TSN wants to go and entertain their fans with some insight from the from the players. I guess from what I've heard, Farhan knows that Nathan Rourke is not a mid-time interview or halftime interview guy. He'd prefer to talk after the game. And Nathan Rourke, if you do watch the rest of the game, after the game, nice hat, by the way. After the game, Nathan Rourke sounded perfect on there. He did a great interview. He answered all of Farhan's questions really well. To me, if you know the guy is not a guy to talk during a game or during halftime, just don't do it. I mean, I get it that you want to do an interview the guy that's hot, but there was other guys that were very good in that game as well that you could have interviewed. For example, William Stanback looked great in that first half, running the ball. I think he was already over 80 yards or 90 yards. Would have been a great interview. But, I know it's Nathan Rourke, and you want Nathan Rourke. But, yeah, my opinion is if the guy doesn't want to do a halftime interview, don't make him do a halftime interview. Make him do a post-game interview. And, again, he sounded great in the post-game, right, Ryan?
Yeah, this one is completely on TSN production. I think this was an article from 3 Down Nation. I want to say that I was reading this in where it had, comments from Farhan, comments from Rourke on there as well. And it was, Rourke says he doesn't like doing mid-game interviews. Farhan said he knew that Rourke doesn't like doing mid-game interviews, and so he never asks him for them. But the producers basically said, no, we have to get him. He's the hometown kid. We need to get him for the mid-game interview. I put this in the Discord. It's the Pikachu shocked face reaction of like, guy says he doesn't want to do an interview. We get him to do an interview anyways. Guy doesn't talk. Like, what are you expecting out of this? What other outcome were you expecting? And yeah, okay, the marketing money, everybody's talking about getting the money to market the league. The league and the team and everybody in TSN should be thanking Nathan Rourke for what he said at halftime here. Every week, every game, we have 2 halftime interviews at least, and that's all fluff and nonsense that you never remember because they say the same thing of, yeah, it was good, but we're getting some stuff going, some stuff we didn't like to see. We're facing a good football team. We have to come out in the second half and execute. Like I guarantee there's been a handful of times this year somebody said those words verbatim. So give me interesting interviews. What are the ones we remember? We remember Henry Burris coming out and telling TSN to go shove it, right? I think that was either halftime or post game or something like that. We remember was it Solomon Aluminium, trash talking somebody else on the field mid interview. Like, these are the ones we remember and that are going to get publicity and the name towards the league. I don't think this is a bad mark on Rourke, especially like he did this once. He says he doesn't like doing that type of interview. It's not that he was disrespecting, arguably, in my opinion, one of the greatest sports interviewers and sports hosts in Farhanology there. So I don't know. This made a media storm this week, and I don't think it was worth it, to be honest. I thought it was a great moment.
Yeah, it was the same way. Like I said, it was not didn't look great for people to kind of complain about. And I get it. You want to hear from Nathan Rourke, but wait till after the game. If he doesn't like doing halftime interviews, it's as simple as that. And I think it was just, you're right. It was TSN with a producer that said, let's go and see what we can get. I was actually thinking of that Solomon Aluminium one when he's trash talking, and then he looks over. It's Farhan. What's up?
Yeah, like if you go and get a guy to do an interview that doesn't want to do an interview, what do you get? You get the Marshawn Lynch showing up. I'm just here so I won't get fined. How is that a useful interview for you versus I like what Richard's saying in the chat. Shout out to Richard. He was on the NFL Fantasy Draft episode with us last night. A lot of fun there. Why don't they interview Alexander Hollins every halftime? That guy is a sound clip machine. There's so many guys that will give you so many good clips, and I get that this is the focal point is on Rourke there. And my favorite comment, and I apologize, I don't remember who had put this on social media. I might have honestly been one of the Piffles podcast guys, but even Nathan Rourke is tired of TSN talking nonstop about Nathan Rourke was the comment, and I thought that was great. Way to sum it up there. But speaking of talking enough about Nathan Rourke, yes, they've turned it around. He's starting this week again. VA is healthy and is moved up from third string to backup, meaning he is fully healthy. But I think Rourke earned it with his performance this last week to continue starting. But he faces a tough defense over on the other side of the ball, which is the Montreal Alouettes defense. 10-1 start to the season, as you mentioned. They've clinched a playoff spot already through 11 games officially this week. A couple of more wins here, and probably not too long before they're clinching a home playoff game out in the East Division. The most notable news for the Alouettes coming off the bye week is Austin Mack, was healthy. He was practicing. Got injured in practice yesterday. If you look at the injury report, it says he's available to play or questionable to play in this week's game. Except he was put on the 6-game injured list today after injuring himself in practice yesterday. So some sort of miscommunication there, I guess, on the injury status of Austin Mack. But this is a guy that was just re-signed by the Alouettes, 2-3 weeks ago? And played maybe 1 or 2 games for them and is now out on the 6th game, which would take you at this point, pretty late in the season. So definitely a devastating blow there for the Montreal Alouettes offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first you have Philpo 2-3 weeks ago, I guess it was, go down for injury I don't know if he's on the 6th game. He
is, yeah.
He is on the 6th game, yep.
If he wasn't, you'd have to take him off of your IR in our fantasy leagues. So.
No, he's in the 1-game IR. It could be in that.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fair enough, yeah.
But nevertheless, Philpo's out. Austin Mack, who, again, they brought him in, but they actually, one thing, though, about Montreal this year that they really have is a lot of depth in their offense. I mean, Cole Speaker is a great option as well. If you look at who they're playing this week, I mean, Reggie White Jr. is still there. You still have a guy like Charleston Rambo on the other side there. Like I said, they do have the players that this isn't going to be the biggest thing. Also, I do like Letcher Jr. as well. He's been their backup for quite a while here and doing a lot of returns. But honestly, he could step up and be a receiver as well. Montreal doesn't really have to worry as much maybe about injuries. I mean, yes, obviously, two of your best receivers injured is a terrible thing. But Fajardo has so many options in front of him. I think he probably was working for the last, 2 weeks, I guess, with some of these other options you would think to make sure that they're ready to go when the BC Lions show up here this weekend.
Yeah, and you mentioned, arguably maybe their second best receiver currently that's healthy on the team is a guy that's not even a receiver at all. It's running back Walter Fletcher. I've got the CFL receiving stats pulled up here. Where do you think Walter Fletcher is at? Could you guess in terms of total receptions among players in the CFL? Where does Walter Fletcher rank?
He's in the top 10, I guarantee that. But give me number 5, number 6, somewhere there.
You're a little high on there. He is tied with Ontario Wilson with 49 receptions on the season as a running back. Let me scroll down and see. Next highest for a running back is Brady Oliveira with 38, who has also had quite a few. And James Butler in 8 games had 37. So, Walter Fletcher then catching passes out of the backfield like crazy this year. He's at 461 receiving yards on the year and 483 rushing yards. So he's basically more of a receiver. 90 carries on the year and 62 targets. So it's like he's almost getting more work through the air, basically, than he is on the ground. And I think fills that receiver role, and they really don't have to use him as a running back because he's been effective in that category. Montreal is one of those teams, just like we had with Toronto last season, where it's just a complete all-around team, and there's a reason that Argo's team went 16-2 last year, and there's a reason the Alouettes, I think, can go in that category again this year, is they've got the depth. As injuries happen, more guys step up and fill in the holes, and they continue to be a dominant team. And I'm going to struggle, spoiler alert for when we do our betting picks here. I'm going to struggle to pick against Montreal almost any week of the season. And the only loss so far this year was the game that Fajardo went down. And now if he does again, Davis Alexander looked pretty darn good in the time he filled in. So, I'm continuing to be high on the Alouettes. We'll see how they play this week coming off the bye week. Let's get into fantasy talk here for this game. And no Austin Mack. That's the big one there over for Montreal. Full disclosure, with the long weekend, with some home life stuff, with NFL stuff, and our draft yesterday, I'm behind on my fantasy charts right now that I usually use for this. So they're a bit of a mess. I don't have the stats fully in from last week, so we are going to have to wing it. At least I am a little bit more here. So I'm a little rusty in that category. So, Adam, I'm going to turn it. You're the fantasy champ. I know we talked about this pre-show, and I'm still the king, but I'm going to turn it over to you. Here, you're the guy leading the way in almost every one of our leagues right now. So, why don't you kick us off on BC Montreal here and tell us what you like?
Well, first things first, I was looking at Nathan Rourke. I mean, $8,000. The guy lit it up against Ottawa, but that was Ottawa. This is Montreal, and Montreal, their linebacking core is insane. If you look at Beverett and you look at guys like, if you look at Darnell Sankey and Wall, that linebacking core is just probably the best in the league, hands down. So is he worth the 8,000? 99.9% of the time, I would say yes. This time, I'm going to say no, just because I'm very nervous that he's going to be taking a lot of pressure, which Montreal likes bringing up the middle. And I don't know if Rourke has been the greatest with pressure so far. But who I do like in this game here right now is kind of one of the old reliables out of BC is Justin McInnes. Yeah. I mean, it's a good spot. It's in a good position for where Rourke has been looking a lot lately. He did get the touchdown the other game there against Ottawa. He's been getting decent yardage in the spot that he's been in. I do like Justin McInnis in this one. Other than that, though, I don't know who Cody Fajardo is going to target. He targets usually where Tyson Philpo was. We've seen that, but Philpo's not there. I believe it might be. I'm just gonna look at the depth chart.
I've got one for you here on the Montreal side that I think is my go-to guy because Rambo did really good when Davis Alexander was in at quarterback. I feel like he doesn't have quite as much of a connection with Fajardo still. Still was pretty good in last game when Fajardo came back, had 95 yards in that one. But I like Cole Speaker and his connection with Cody Fajardo. Earlier this year in weeks 4 and 5, he was the number 2 and number 4 receiver. In week 12 with Fajardo back, he was the number 1 receiver in the CFL fantasy-wise that week, 107 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they obviously had that connection last season. So he is a little boomer bust sometimes, but you know what? He can creep up into that top 10 wide receiver role, and especially with Mac out, with Phil Potts still out, I think him and Rambo are your top 2 receivers over there in Montreal.
No, that's perfect. Yep. Another option would be to take the Montreal defense, but you are still facing a pretty powerful offense in the BC Lions. If they can start scoring, you're going to be losing points pretty fast with Montreal. But I don't know. Defense is defense. I mean, I've seen the strategy come out this week again. Take the Hamilton defense because it's the cheapest.
Yeah, shout out to
because you're going to at least not lose points.
Shout out to Charlie in the Discord for the continual tie cats on a bye week. Just take the 0 for the cheap defense strategy. I love it.
Yep. It's a legitimate strategy. I've won with that strategy once.
Yeah, that has happened. For me, other options I like in this game, I mean, Walter Fletcher is always tempting, but also scary because he really doesn't run the ball at all. And so you're banking on those receptions. But I mean, in his last 2 games, 9 targets and 11 targets for a running back is extreme workload for a receiving back. That has to be in consideration there, I think. I'm actually, for the first time this year in the current lineup I have in, I'm kind of thinking of perhaps going in the direction of William Stanback. And that's because he's been running a lot in the last couple of weeks. He's been running pretty good. 87, 100, and 99 yards in weeks 10, 11, and 12. I don't have it showing up on this chart, so I got to go find it on my other one here. Oh, boy, this is going to be a mess. 93 yards and a touchdown on the ground last week for Stanback as well, and 6 catches for 78 yards. He was the number 1 running back in the CFL. That's 3 times this year. I think he's been the number 1 fantasy running back. Montreal's going to shut down the pass. They do that to everybody. They're a little more susceptible to the run. It's also, maybe a bit of a revenge game for Stanback playing against his former team, the Alouettes. This might be a week I take a look at him at running back, but I don't know. I think I'm staying away from anybody from the BC offense right now. Rourke at the price is tempting, but I don't need to save the money. The receivers, I definitely don't trust Alexander Hollins after the number of drops he's had and missed targets. McInnis potentially. Hatcher really hasn't shown much. This week, a little bit more. I think if anybody on BC side, it's Stanback for me. And on Montreal's side, I think Cody Fajardo, honestly, is a strong candidate for a quarterback this week. He has hit over the 20-point mark 4 of his 7 games so far this year, and had another one of 18 in there. And really, has a solid floor there, too, outside of the 1 game where he did get injured. His lowest total on the year has been 14 fantasy points. I think he could play there. And as I mentioned, Cole Speaker is my favorite receiver on the Alouettes this week. So we got into our betting picks for this game and all of the games this week. I don't have our stats from the past couple of weeks on how we've been doing there, but so I don't know how badly the coin is beating all of us right now. But BC comes into Montreal. Games are all close this week, and Montreal is 3.5-point favorites at home. The over/under is set at 50 in this game. Adam, what are you taking?
This is a tough one, just because I think BC's been playing a little bit better lately. Montreal's maybe, I don't know if it's rest or rust. Which one's going to happen with Montreal this week? Sometimes you take a week off, things kind of go wonky. But you know what? I think Coach Moss has them under control for that kind of thing. So I'll take the Alouettes. It's very tough to take a guy over Nathan Rourke, actually, after what we seen last weekend. But you know what? It's Montreal. They're a very, very good team. Uh, I will go with the under, though, in this game because I think this is going to be a defensive battle. I think Matthew Betts is going to be a lot more involved because he had a whole week of practice for instead of just coming in and deciding to go through walkthrough. And, of course, I told you about Montreal's linebacking core. So give me the under, give me the Montreal Alouettes in this one.
I previewed it before. I'm taking the Alouettes here as well. All these games are close enough this week, honestly. I think this is the biggest line of the week at 3.5. And when it's that close, I know a lot of games get close, but to me, I start looking at it as just a pickup of basically who do I think is going to win, right? Because to me, it seems extreme sometimes to be like, well, I think BC could lose by 2. I'm just gonna pick the Montreal to win. They do need to win by more than a field goal in this one because it is 3.5. But I think they can do it. I'm high on them. I'm taking Montreal, and I'm also I think going to take the under just because Rourke has had his struggles. He looked better in the first half last week. He looked a little more composed there, but Montreal's defense is a whole different beast they have to face. So. I'm going to take the under on that as well. Trey did hop into the chat to say he is the Facebook chat to say he is taking Montreal also and is taking the over on 50 in this game. What does the coin say?
Well, let's take a look here. Give it a quick little flip, and it is saying that the Montreal Alouettes will win this game.
All right, so we're all on Team Montreal in this one.
Except for Richard in the chat. I'm sure he's not on Team Montreal.
Yeah, I mean, I have the wrong hat on to pick Montreal, but hey, we are a non-biased podcast, unbiased, neutral.
Yes.
Well, we try to be, at least. I can't... We normally pick player props from FanDuel. I tried to load the site. None of the games on the site are loading for me. It seems like, NFL came around and they decided that I can no longer see CFL player props. I think you were able to pull them up at least still. So do you have a quick one you want to throw out here on this game?
Yeah, of course. I know everybody gets bored of me picking up the rushing yards ones. But Walter Fletcher is 54.5 for the number this week for total yards. And I'm going to go with the over on that because I think, if anything, he's got to start running the ball a little bit. Although probably they'll throw him over 100 yards reception and I'll look foolish. But nevertheless, I'm going to try on that one, 54.5 on the over for Walter Fletcher.
Yeah, that's a close one for me, I have to say. Looking at his rushing totals this year, of the ones he's hit over that number, he had 1 week with 82, one of 56, one of 60, one of 56, 53, 54. So he's hovered on the weeks where he's been at his peak rushing total, like right there. So you could be sweating a little with that pick. What's the number on William Stanback?
William Stanback is 80.5.
Ooh,
pretty high.
That is a pretty high total. Looking at Stanback, I would go for that on Stanback. I think they're going to need to lean on him in the rushing game in this one. I think I would take the over on William Stanback, 80.5, as high as it is.
It's actually funny because they have player receiving yards, and Walter Fletcher is 44.5.
Oh, I would take that more than I'd take his rushing total, I think.
Yeah, it's true. That's a good one for Fletcher. So.
Yeah. What was the rushing number you had for Fletcher? Just noting that down.
The rushing number was 54.5, and the receiving number was 44.5.
And you took the over on the rushing yards.
Yeah, I figured they're going to run the ball a little bit.
All right. Let's move on to the first game of our Saturday triple header, which is the Toronto Argonauts visiting the Ottawa Redblacks. Both of these teams, I believe, losing last week. The Argos with the major upset against the Ticats. where Hamilton came out to a 21-3 or whatever lead in the early on in that game. Ottawa just falling flat over there in Victoria for touchdown Pacific. What's the major storyline here for you?
For me, I think, first of all, Ottawa -1.5. It's been a long time since I've seen that against the Toronto Argonauts. The Argonauts, I don't know. To me, it feels almost like they're starting to get into a little bit of a free fall. Yes, they beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders by 1 point. They really didn't look great in that game. They lose to the Hamilton Tiger Cats, which is a terrible one. They don't like losing during Labor Day. They haven't lost in Labor Day for a very long time. And all of a sudden they lose against the Ticats. The Ticats are still, I think, not the greatest of teams, but yet Toronto somehow managed to pull it off to lose against them. Yes, they had a little bit of a comeback in the fourth quarter, had a chance, but you know what? At the end of the day, they still lost the game. And, Chad Kelly's looked okay. I think he's done a little bit with his feet, a little bit with the run, a little bit with the pass. I think he's looked all right coming back so far. I haven't really heard if he's been looking like he's been getting rattled. I mean, in that first quarter, clearly something was wrong in Hamilton. But other than that, I don't know if they really have the receiving core right now to Toronto to really get this done. They've been relying on Kadeem Carey all season to run the football. Pretty much, they have to get 70, 80 yards out of Kadeem Carey to be viable in the games lately. And I really don't know if they're going to get much out of the receiving core, and I think that's a big issue for them. I did like Kevin Meitel. He came in. He looked decently last week. David Unger I always said, was just kind of a good receiver for Canadian receiver. And, other than that, DeMonte Coxey's been kind of average again this year. Until Toronto really gets their receiving core going, this team doesn't scare me as much as it used to, right?
See, I disagree with that, though, because this is the same receiving core, like 90% of it, at least, as it was last season. And it didn't scare us last season, but Chad Kelly was the MOP and putting up like 4 touchdowns a game at a certain rate between the air and the ground. So they've never had that superstar quality like Tavares Daniels, DeMonte Coxey are probably your 1 and 2 in that category. In terms of receivers, and I've just been getting it done the past couple of years. And it seems like Daniels is actually reestablishing some sort of connection with Kelly. Like the big talk all of last season, all of early this year for us with Toronto is who's going to get the target share for this team because they're going to spread the ball around. I think it's back-to-back weeks with 10 targets for Tavares Daniels. So, when we get to fantasy, maybe that's a guy I have my eye on. In fantasy this week. I think he's listed as questionable on the injury report. Just double checking that. Yeah, he was limited earlier in the week, but full participant this week for them. So keep in mind that. But seems like they're establishing a bit of a connection there. But yes, the Argos this year have very much been an up and down team. And I think they're a team that will get on more of a roll with Kelly at quarterback down the stretch here. So I expect them to pick it up. But it seemed like they shot themselves in the foot just a couple of times too many in this football game. They start off the game going down 21-3. Then they rally back. They take the lead on it, and at the end of the day, they'll let the Ticats come back in and mop up and finish the game off there. And Levi Mitchell looked pretty good in that one. Back in the saddle here. I want to talk about the other side of this matchup, though, because I think that's where we could spend longer on the major storylines. A bombshell news drop this week. Jamal Morrow is back in the CFL. Third time's the charm after he tried to sign with the Stampeders in February, failed his physical, and was let go. He tried to sign with the Stampeders earlier this year, failed his physical, and it didn't go. He is now signed to the practice roster of the Ottawa Red Blacks. And along with that same news drop comes the news that one Raquel Armstead has been released by the Red Blacks. Leading rusher from the team, I thought has looked pretty good for a guy whose name we weren't familiar with coming into the year. 4th in the CFL in rushing yards with 623 through 11 games, also 3 touchdowns. What do you make of all of this, Adam?
Well, not only that, they let go one of their starting defensive ends as well, which was utterly amazing. I mean, I from what's been talked about, again, it's mostly from Three Down Nation. I'm not sure of this. I'm sure it's fine, but Armstead was upset on the sidelines because he wasn't getting the ball enough. Was verbally abusive almost, they said, and was just really loud. Players had to hold him back from doing anything really silly. Not a good situation, and I know for a fact that Coach Dice would not tolerate guys kind of mouthing off and doing things that they shouldn't be doing on the sidelines. So, but is that enough to throw your fourth leading receiver or rusher in the CFL away?
Look, I mean, this is the year where nothing makes sense in the CFL. Didn't you have what was it? 3 of the top 5 quarterbacks in passing yards that were now relegated to backups on their teams. Now you have the 4th leading rusher in the CFL openly cut here. This is bizarro league this year. Nothing makes sense, so I'm not surprised by any news item anymore.
Well, and I mean, like you look at it, James Butler's been benched for, I don't care. It's not about a tooth anymore. He's been benched for 4 weeks. I mean, really? That's one of the better rushers in the league. And again, don't seem to affect Hamilton's aggregates. They just got Greg Bell and they keep rolling. Ottawa, I guess, Jamal Morrow eventually will play. Who is their backup running back right at the moment? Or I guess starting running back now?
Yeah, it doesn't look like Jamal Morrow is going to play this week. So let me go to the depth chart here, or the team roster on the website. Devontae Dedmon has been playing running back this year, but I believe he is out on the injury report, so that's not going to help.
Nope.
So then I have to go down to the practice squad on their website because they haven't brought him up yet. Kalen Laborn, 5'10", 212 pounds, 25 years old, American receiver, went to Marshall, or running back, sorry. Looks like he'll get the start this week for them with Jamal Moore maybe taking a little bit of time to get set up there. And so I think he's going to get the start. This Ottawa team, though, that offense that we were very impressed with what they had on offense. Not only that, do you now have Jalen Acklin who's out? You have Braylon Addison who's been out. I think both of those guys are out on the 6-game injured list. Nick Mardner is questionable to play this week. We had 2 no-names, so to say, at least for us in the CFL, step up into that receiving core this week. Andre Miller got a start in there, and Eli Stove looked pretty good with 9 targets, 8 receptions, and 73 yards. So it's always, next man up for opportunities, but seems like that offense is looking mighty thin for the Red Blacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible time to go and, our receiving core is pretty much all injured. Let's get rid of our running back. What? I mean,
but to be fair, it's not just I don't think it's just the one instance. Like, apparently, if there was yelling on the sideline, Armstead got thrown out of a game earlier this year. He's been fined by the CFL twice. This isn't the first time it's happened. And if you're, frustrated with not getting usage as a running carries when your team's down 31-6 at halftime, right? Like, there is no room to run the ball in the second half and run out the clock. So do we see another team pick up Armstead? I don't know if it.
I mean, there's some teams with need for running back. I don't know if maybe Calgary needs backup running back help. I think they found themselves a really good running back.
Yeah.
Edmonton sure don't need help with running back. I know that nowadays. The Rough Riders could probably use a backup running back if AJ Ouellette's injury is really serious. To maybe complement Frankie Hickson. Other than that, I mean, Toronto's got, like I said, they've got Kadeem Carey in there, and I don't think they'll trade it to a rival anyways. Hamilton's got 2 good running backs. Montreal's got a good receiver in as running back. I mean, like I said, I don't see anybody really needing running back right now. I again, other than maybe a backup or maybe a 1-2 punch in Rough Rider land, otherwise, I don't see anybody.
Yeah, I think if it's an attitude problem, like
Yeah.
Mike always says, running backs are a dime a dozen, and we saw it with Armstead himself. I think teams are going to trust with what they've got and give one of those guys a shot. I mean, look at Greg Bell in Hamilton. Did we think he was going to take over for James Butler this year? No, and now he's turned into one of the best running backs in the league. So I think that this could be the last we see of Armstead this season. So Armstead is not a player you should pick in fantasy picks for this week. But Adam, who do you got your eye on in this game?
Well, let me take a look here. Of course, I think I've got to go with old reliable Kadeem Carey. Seems to always get some good yardage for the Toronto Argonauts. Do like him in this one here. Other than that, I really didn't pick a whole lot out of this game here. Just again, you could, if you needed some cheap receiver, you could probably go with Stove. Other than that, I really didn't see a whole lot that I really liked in fantasy this week out of Ottawa or Toronto, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I look at the Ottawa side. I mean, Dominic Rhymes did step up and get the touchdown last week. Justin Hardy has been the go-to receiver there, and I thought was going to be an absolute slam dunk pick. I came this close to making Justin Hardy my captain last week because I thought he was just going to eat against the BC Lions as the mainstay receiver there. And he was a disappointment, honestly. That was one of his worst weeks of the year. 8.9 fantasy points for him on that one. Was not what we expected out of him last week, but I think he still has been so consistent. So I don't know. I don't one game out of Stove. I'm not going to buy it. I need a couple more, like we needed from Pimpleton, or at least I needed from Pimpleton to look his direction before he got injured. I think if there's any Ottawa receiver I'm taking, it's going to be Justin Hardy again. I'm not going to bank on the running back, especially against the Argos. I think whoever starts at running back, I'm not going to trust that. And I think Drew Brown, just outside of the flash in the pan performance here and there, I don't think he throws enough touchdowns to merit strong fantasy consideration at quarterback. But on the Argos side, I do think Chad Kelly is once again one of the top quarterback options this week. 24.8 fantasy points last week. 322 yards through the air, 39 yards on the ground, and a touchdown through the air and on the ground, one pick. So he hasn't put the touchdowns up on the board quite as much, but if you can get a quarterback that's potentially giving you 10 points on the ground plus slinging it through the air, I think that has to be strongly in consideration, especially if we think Ottawa's offense could stall a little bit here and more time for Kelly and the Argos offense to be out on the field. So I would lean in the direction of one Chad Kelly at quarterback. And I liked what you said about Kadeem Carey. He's been so consistent this year. Last week for him, one of his down weeks as well. He got no targets through the air. So maybe that's something to keep an eye on now with Kelly going forward. More so than like Arbuckle and Cameron Dukes are there less check down passes to the running back? Because I think that's where a lot of Kadeem Carey's early season value came from. He rushed for 78 yards on 12 carries. It's a great rushing total last week. But if you're not catching any balls and you're not scoring a touchdown, that's 7.8 fantasy points and a disappointment. So I'm keeping my eye on that, but Carey has been pretty consistent this year. And like I said earlier, if there's any Toronto receiver I like right now, it is DeVaris Daniels, because it seems to be the number one guy that Chad Kelly has his eye on. But check the injury report, check the depth chart to make sure he's out there. Anything else fantasy-wise on this game? Any thoughts there for you, or we want to get into our betting picks?
I think we better get into our betting picks here. Again, Toronto's a 1.5 point underdog, which is strange looking at going into Ottawa. Ottawa had that long losing streak at home that one time, and it just still feels weird looking at Ottawa with a home advantage again this week. Hey, Ron?
Well, they're the only team in the CFL that has not lost a game at home this season. So they are 5-0-1 at home, are the Red Blacks. I can go first on this game because I made you go first on the last one, and this one's tough for me. It's really tough because both of these teams have had some inconsistencies lately. Um, both of these teams I could see stepping up and having a bounce back game this week. I'm gonna ride, since it is kind of a coin flip for me, but I'm not going to defer to the coin. I will take Ottawa just because of their record at home. I feel a little bit better about that one there, and the Red Blacks here. Although maybe I should be going the other direction if I think Kelly is a top fantasy performer, but. Yeah, I'm going to go with Ottawa here, and I think I'm going to take the under. 51.5 seems high for what these two teams are scoring at right now for me. So give me Ottawa and the under. What about you?
Yeah, you're right. This is a terrible game to try to pick because Ottawa, you worried about the receivers. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And also now you got to worry about who's going to run the ball. Unless Drew Brown has an amazing game and a huge game plan, and they have this ready for the Argonauts, I'm worried that offense ain't going to be on the field very much, and that means the defense is going to get tired against the reigning MOP Chad Kelly. So, sorry, Ottawa, you got to lose eventually at home. Toronto's going to win this one. I'm going to pick the Argonauts. I'm going to go with the under on this game here. I think this is going to be a closer scoring game. Could be one of those grind 'em outs. Although Chad Kelly could blow it open too, but I don't think so. I'm going to go with the Argonauts. Go with the under, and let's see what the coin does. The coin is going with the Toronto Argonauts.
All right, so I guess my coin flip is different than your coin flip because my coin flip says the when I ended up going Ottawa's direction there, but we all trusted your coin the most. So, all right, Adam and the coin go with the Argos. What do you got for player props on this game? You got anything loaded up there?
I have not even looked at it yet. Give me a moment here, and I'll see what I can pull up that are really interesting quickly. Ottawa and Toronto, if this will load for me. Here we go. Passing yards. Here's a neat one for you. Drew Brown actually has his number is 303.5 for passing yards. Chad Kelly's is 295.5, which is less than Drew Brown's, which is kind of amazing. And I think Chad Kelly's going to have a pretty good game this week. But I think I'll go Drew Brown with the under on that one. 303.5. I just don't know who. Honestly, I don't know who he's throwing the football to right at this point. Besides Stove, and I mean, he had some connection there. Dominic Rhymes is there, but I mean, hasn't done much all season.
Yeah, I you know what? Since I can't load up the different ones in front of me, I'm just gonna +1 you on that one and go with that. I really think that Drew Brown. I mean, you saw my reaction when you listed the number of 306 or whatever it was for Drew Brown. I was appalled.
303.5. Sorry.
303.5. So I was appalled at that number. I thought it would be something in like the 260, 270 range, maybe. I think the Argos defense has locked it down a lot more in recent weeks. Ignore 347 yards from Bo Levi Mitchell last week. Bo did that to everybody earlier in the season, right? Like Bo it makes a lot of those yards from some long passes, 70 yards, 50 yards to Tim White, 48 yards to Brendan O'Leary-Orange last week. Like that was 3 passes. And I feel like we haven't seen, Drew Brown stretching the field quite as much. I can pull up his stats. Let's see. He had 206 last week. And looking at Drew Brown's stats earlier this year, he's gone over that 300 mark 3 times on the year, and he came close one other one. But I'm just not feeling it. Not feeling it in this game. I think Toronto's locked things down a little bit more lately.
No, I agree.
All right, we move on to our third game of the week. Are we moving on to Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, or are we going to Calgary, Edmonton? Because last week, ended up in a little bit of an awkward situation here.
No, we can't do that twice to Ryan, so go ahead.
All right, we go to the Winnipeg, Saskatchewan game. We got to pull out the swap of the hat. I'm the only one who's never swapped hats mid podcast. I think actually that's not true. We got Winnipeg. We've got Saskatchewan. A rematch, the Banjo Bowl. Bombers pull out the close win last week with after Zach Collaros leaves at halftime. After a big hit there, Chris Trevor doesn't do a whole ton in the second half, but to get the job done. And Brett Lauder misses a really long field goal that I didn't get to see because my PVR cut out right before the final field goal attempt. So I didn't actually know how this game ended until I had to watch Sports Center afterwards and see what happened. But yes, they're back again in Winnipeg for the Banjo Bowl, sold out game as it typically is. And what's the big storyline here for you?
Well, I think the big storyline over the week has been Wade Miller's comments post game about it's pointing pretty much straight directly at Randy Ambrosie and saying, "Hey, you got to go and protect our quarterback, namely Zach Collaros, because he was taken out again in the second straight Labor Day Classic." I'll give you my opinion on it. You can go and accept it or not accept it, but you know what? Miles Brown's hit was not. It was a hit that you don't want to see in the league. It's one of those that hit the quarterback in the head. It's head and head contact. It's bad. Don't get me wrong. He got fined for it. That's probably what should have happened on this. Is he a dirty player? He should be suspended for as long as Collaros is injured? Well, Collaros is in practice this week. Is he that hurt? Come on. You were upset because your quarterback got taken out in the game. It happens quite a bit. If you want to scream that, then you have to go and start talking about the Shea Patterson hit again. And I didn't hear Wade Miller that day. Oddly enough, it was pretty quiet. I don't know, maybe missed that play. Anyways, some of the big storylines, though, again, I'm not getting into if the player should be suspended and all that. I think what was done was done. It's over. It's
I'll just weigh in on that before we move in and say I'm so tired. I'm so tired of all of the conversation when it comes to hits and suspend the guy, fine the guy. The topic, the main focus of the topic is we need less of these hits in the league, and that comes with awareness of situations like that. But I feel like a one-game suspension versus a max fine is not going to teach an individual any differently to let up on a hit like that. Like, either you did something wrong or you didn't. If you want to penalize a guy, if you think it's worth penalizing a little bit more, then sure. And I certainly hope we don't have players that are like, well, I'm just going to get a fine. I can pay that. This might help my team win the championship. I can sincerely hope that's not happening anywhere in the CFL. But all of these, slowing down the hit. Oh, you hit him in the head. Yes, penalty on the field. Let's get that right and impact the game here and stuff like that as well. But I'm in the same boat as you. I don't think Brown is a dirty player. I think, it wasn't a great hit. And he made a bad decision in that moment, and he probably should have let up a little bit there. I think a fine is appropriate in this scenario for him. And Collaros is fine. I don't even think he was in concussion protocol in that game. I think he was mostly held out for precautions throughout the second half. And did I not tell you on this very podcast last week that they should start Chris Strevler because with no Stanley Bryant, the Riders are going to send everybody on the blitz and you need to protect Collaros for the stretch? And sure enough, look what happens.
Yeah, well, exactly. Although I gotta admit, though, that second half with Chris Trevler in there resulted in nothing. I mean, he made a few passes over to Brady Oliveira and a couple through his buddy Drew Wolodarski. Otherwise, there wasn't a whole lot there for Chris Trevler. I mean, his longest pass was 5 yards? A couple of yak yards after, but that's about all that there was. Nevertheless, go to the Winnipeg side of the football first, actually. Big report this week, though. It sounds like Adam Bighill might be out for the season, from what I've heard. I'm not sure what exactly the injury is.
Knee injury.
Knee?
Yeah.
Micah Johnson threw him probably a good 6 feet in the air there. And I mean, when he landed, I don't know why you would go and try to make a play on an offensive lineman that is a defensive lineman, first of all.
I'm so tired. Tonight's just the night I'm clearly tired. I think I need more sleep. But I'm just so tired of hearing about Micah Johnson on the offensive line because that's all we heard on every single play for the rest of the game. But credit to him, it was a heck of a performance for a defensive lineman that had to go in on the O-line, and he did a pretty darn good job, and the Riders almost pulled off the comeback late in the game there. So I'll give him credit that he played really well, but it was over and over and over again on the broadcast there from Johnson. And maybe that's because it doesn't happen, but I guess that's not the, broadcasters pick their storylines and they repeat them over and over, and we probably do the same on this show. So maybe I shouldn't be giving them such a hard time for it. But Adam Bighill injury didn't look good. Out for the season potentially, for sure out this week, and that's a big hole in the middle of the defense there for the Bombers. That passing defense that I love and call the number one defense in the CFL, and I'm still up there, upper echelon defense for me. Maybe Montreal's taken number one back, but looked a little bit more susceptible in the last couple of weeks against Bo Levi Mitchell and Trevor Harris.
Yeah. And the other one also was the Riders defense looked pretty average against Zach Collaros when he was in. I mean, they were playing a lot of zone defense, but Collaros was picking it apart, essentially. He was able to move the football, whether it was get passes off to Kenny Lawler, whether it was go over to Nick Dembski once or twice, I think he did. Zach Collaros did have some able to move the ball. Ontario Wilson, I know, had a big play, I believe. Like I say, it was the Riders' defense and secondary looked pretty rough. Did the front line look great? Well, not really either in the defense because the Micah Johnson was out. I mean, he had to go and play offense, so that means that there was no real coverage on the defensive side of the football, and that's why you've seen a lot of Brady Oliveira in the second half because they knew there was a hole right there. We'll see. It's going to be very interesting to see what Saskatchewan does for their offensive line this week. At the moment, they are missing two centers. Zach Fry's 6-gamed. I think he broke his arm. I'm not sure on it exactly, but I know he's going to be out. I know that Peter Godber's out, which is their main starting center. I believe it is, it's the Regina boy that's going to be starting at center, not Dan Clark. The Dan Clark replacement, essentially.
Logan Furlan?
Yep, that's who's starting in the center spot. And then they got Noah Zur from Langenberg. He's going to be in the left guard spot. And then they got another right guard coming in. This is going to be chaos.
How do we end up at the same spot every season? And sometimes it's even before training camp ends, where every offseason we talk about the Riders finally rebuilt the offensive line. Oh, the offensive line is looking good. This is the key. This is what they needed to get things done. And then whether it's 1, 2, 0, 8, 13 weeks into the season, we're back at the same point where it's like, hello, anybody out here can play offensive line? Please come play. Like, the number of injuries this team has had on the offensive line in the last couple of years is insane.
And the crazy part is, I think, I don't quote me on the stat exactly, but they said in the last 4 years, or no, not 4 years, 3 years, the Riders have had 78 different lineman combinations. I mean, it's insane how these guys keep going. Meanwhile, Jeremy O'Day, I don't know. I thought this week I would have heard of like 4 different offensive linemen being signed. Not a one. I mean, as far as I know, Dakota Shepley's available. I don't think he got signed up by any NFL team. Their number one pick this year got into the practice roster of the New Orleans Saints. So, okay, fair enough. But surely there gosh darn got to be at least a couple of offensive linemen out there.
You would think, right? You think there have to be some out there they can bring in. So we'll see what comes out on the depth chart. All these depth charts for the Saturday games are going to drop on Friday. So I have plenty of information. We'll have all of the information for this week before fantasy begins, by the way. We do have a commenter in the chat saying, love you guys from all the way from Kill Devil Hills, North Carolina. Thanks for tuning in. Happy to have you here from North Carolina. Wow, we're going international here, Adam. Look at us.
I know.
Who would have thought?
Special. I feel special all of a sudden.
I know, right? Love comments like that. Yes, Saskatchewan, the offensive line, but they still got it done offensively last week. 368 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air for Trevor Harris against this Bombers defense that have been averaging like 230, 240 yards against through the passing game before that. So we'll see if Trevor Harris can repeat that this week. Winnipeg side of things, of course, Zach Collaros is available and ready to play this week. I'm pretty sure he will be starting once again. I don't know. I know Trey's saying in the Facebook chat, yes, Chris Streveler did enough to get the win. He got it done. He did get the 2 touchdowns on the ground there for that offense, but the Chris Streveler play is not sustainable. Do I think he could start and win the Banjo Bowl for them by rushing for 80 yards? Yeah, I do think Chris Streveler could win that. Do I think if Collaros was out long-term that he could lead this team into the postseason? No, I'm not confident in that category. I don't think his play style is sustainable. You need to let him pass the ball. And you need to, that's the only way he is going to get better at passing the ball is if you let him pass the ball. And he's just not doing that and hasn't been doing that really. 7 carries for 12 yards for him last week, just 6 pass attempts in the second half for Chris Streveler. So I need to see more from him. Work him in for more packages. He was supposed to be the fullback actually for the Bombers this last game on the depth chart because they didn't dress one. But he didn't get in for too many unique plays like that. Any other major storyline we have? I think we covered most of the big ones on this game. Again, sold out crowd here in Winnipeg. Always a big game. Looking forward to that. And let's talk about fantasy options. Where do you got one more?
Just one more thing. If you're looking for this game on TSN, good luck because it will not be on TSN. It'll be over on CTV. First game for a very long time, since before I was born, 1987, I think was the last time they had a game on CTV. So yeah, cool. Gonna look forward to going and turning halfway through my thing to CTV to go and watch a football game.
Did you?
And I can't think there's fans complaining about this. Please don't.
Did you see the outrage this week from everybody that's been clamoring to have the games on CTV for years? That now realizes that all of their, TSN subscription packages and lack of cable means they can't watch the game. That being said, if you have TSN Plus, you can watch the enhanced feed on TSN Plus with all the cool data analytics, which I would love to see sometime.
It's cool. I've watched it a couple times now. It's really neat.
Oh, yeah, right on. And the game will be on CTV. I'm kind of surprised they didn't put it on both, but this is TSN we're talking about. We know they don't know how to manage multiple channels. So
they barely can get a satellite feed to work, let alone don't push them. They couldn't get the Spider Cam even to work the other day. So.
And Trey's saying in the chat, you might be able to sign up for it as well. And watch your local CTV station. I don't think you can watch it on demand after the fact, maybe the game, but nonetheless, hopefully people find a way to watch it. And when they watch it, maybe they'll pick players from this game in fantasy. Do you have any, Adam?
Let me take a look what I've got here because I think I had one. No, I pulled him already and switched him out. So I have, I can't really pick on this game here too well. I mean, Trevor Harris was pretty good last week. But if you got him as captain, it was okay. Otherwise, I don't know. He was average. I mean, especially when you compare to the next quarterback we're going to be talking about in the next game. I don't know who to pick. You don't dare pick the Winnipeg quarterback because you never know. He might get touched and injured, and then Wade Miller has to come in for quarterback. Chris Streveler has to come in for quarterback. Receivers, I mean, you could go with Brady Oliveira. He looks decent. Didn't really get a whole lot of yards last week, and he didn't even get really no touchdowns, so that didn't help you. You know what? I'll go with the Trey Colbeck's pick. Maybe go pick Chris Streveler. He might get you a couple rushing touchdowns.
He did last week. Yeah, on the Winnipeg side, Oliveira's been my go-to, but last week was a disappointment. The Riders have a very good run defense, and that there's no secret there. There's always the temptation with Oliveira because I feel like he's one of those guys that delivers in big games, and none other than home stadium and rematch with the Riders here. Season series on the line with this game as well. I don't think we talked about that, right? Because Riders 1-1, Bombers 1-1. This one is for the season series. But I think there are other running backs I might lean more towards this week. I might skip out on Oliveira there. I called it last week. Nick Dembski plays good against the Riders, and he got his 64 yards and a touchdown last week, 16 fantasy points there. I think that's the best Bomber receiver option I'm looking at. Kenny Lawler, I don't know. He's not delivering the last couple of weeks fantasy wise. I expect a bigger impact, but seems like he's hovering around the 10-point mark. The receivers on Saskatchewan's side, on the other hand, it's an embarrassment of riches, and it makes it hard, really, to commit to one. I think this is where there are some actual good, cheap options that I'm leaning towards this week because I was a little bit lower cash-wise. Dante Myers is $4,000.
Don't take him. He's injured.
Is he injured?
Yep.
Where's this injury report? Oh, Dante Myers is out this week. Thank you, Adam. So this is why we have multiple people on here. And this is why you're the fantasy expert.
If you're looking for some cheap receivers in the Rough Riders, Keyshawn Johnson has been very good for the Rough Riders as of late. He'd make a good pickup if you're looking for one. He seems to have a pretty good connection with Trevor Harris. Ashowo is going to be filling in for where Dante Myers is. Not the most expensive receiver that I could tell. So he should be okay to maybe pick in as well. The other one also, he's probably a little more expensive, but if you look for a good national, Keon Schaefer-Baker's been getting some good plays lately. I don't know if he's going to get more because Myers is gone this week, but yeah, he might be an interesting one to take a look at as well.
Even better than Dante Myers, Keyshawn Johnson is $2,500 in fantasy, which is absolutely insane. He was the wide receiver 4 last week, and looking at other previous recent weeks, had been in wide receiver 17, wide receiver 3, and wide receiver 11 in his 3 games before that. So he's been delivering a lot. He's been getting a lot of targets in recent weeks, and more so, I think, with Dante Myers out there. I think Sam Emelis continues to get a crazy target share there as well. And Sean Bain seems to be the guy that plays his best games against the Bombers also. So take your pick on the Saskatchewan receivers. Eileen Keyshawn Johnson is the one I'm probably putting in my lineup among them this week, knowing now that Dante Myers is out. And the Riders are currently the defense I have in my lineup as well. If because Collaros throws some timely picks, the Riders force some turnovers, and if Strevler gets in, I'm not confident in his ability to move the ball down the field the whole time. All right. Betting picks for this game here. Slight correction in the chat. You can log in for free on CTV through your TV provider. So you might need a cable provider in order to do that, or sign up for some sort of package, or get TSN Plus and watch it online through there, or get the good old rabbit ears out and the antenna out and watch CTV for free that way.
Find a black and white TV and experiment. Learn all about the old days.
Yeah, back when I was a boy. The line on this game is the Bombers 3-point favorites at home. Generally, home team gets 3 points, so it's kind of a split here, or a wash, so to say. Over-under is at 48. Tell us what you are thinking for your betting picks.
Oh, usually you never bet against the home team when you're playing the Labor Day or the Banjo Bowl. It's just the way it goes usually. Winnipeg definitely has the advantage in the Banjo Bowl. The Riders always have the advantage in Labor Day. But for some reason, the Bombers had to go and mess all this up for me. Because I was going to pick the Bombers this week, hoping that they would win this one because I knew they were going to lose last week. But no, we had to decide to win a game. Even though they tried their best to give it to the Rough Riders, just Brett Lawler's leg isn't quite as strong as Sergio Castillo's. Anyways, now I have to go with the Rough Riders to try to hope that they can go and win the season series. I'm going to go with the Riders. I'm going to go with the over on this game because I think it could become a gun show in the end, unless Caleros gets injured, which could happen. Now I'm second guessing myself. So before I do that, I'm going to go with the Riders and the over.
All right. Trey is going with the Bombers in the over. Not a huge surprise there. I agreed with. I went with you. Well, I went with the coin last week and took the Riders on that one. That didn't pan out for me. Now, did it? I don't think it did. So I'm going to go with the Bombers on this one. I know I normally take the home and home split, but I feel like Labor Day Banjo Bowl is a little bit different than that. We haven't even talked about it yet. That I don't have the faith in the Riders right now. I haven't all season. I've been the one that's waiting for their mistakes to catch up to them and to come crashing down, and that's what's happened. We talked about the team that was starting to run away with first place in the West. That's now third place in the West Division with 11 points right now, and potentially going to lose the season series to Winnipeg. And
the Rough Riders could be fifth by the end of the weekend.
That is not true because Calgary and Edmonton are both at 8 points and Saskatchewan's at 11. And they also play each other. So they're going to be as low as third, but one of Edmonton and Calgary could be 1 point back of them for in this West Division playoff race. So the Riders lately, I compared it in the Discord this week to Saskatchewan lately is Edmonton early this season, where they are a good football team, but they're making too many mistakes late in the game. And it's one weird way or after another that they are blowing football games late. So I don't trust them right now. I'm higher on the Bombers. I'm going to take Winnipeg on this one, and I'm also going to take the over. What does the coin say?
Well, let's see. It's a Rough Rider coin, so you would think, but let's see. I guess the coin is even against me this week. It's the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It's stamped Rough Riders on it, and it still takes the Bombers.
Love it. I love it. What do you got for a prop bet on it?
Let's take a look here. I actually had a pretty good one here. Because the Rough Riders, I think, are going to be having a lot of trouble trying to find some open receivers. Although this one here, I think, is pretty interesting. Keon Schaefer-Baker is at 53.5 right now. I think he's better than that. I'm sure they're going to be looking at him quite a bit this week. So I'm going to go with over on Keon Schaefer-Baker getting 53.5.
I like it. Yeah, again, I don't have the props in front of me, so hard for me to take a pick too much one way or another on any of these. I don't know. Throw out a random one that you think is juicy, and I'll pick throw out a line you think is juicy, and I'll pick the over/under on it.
How about a rushing one here? Brady Oliveira, 65.5.
Ooh.
That one should be juicy for you.
Yeah, I would have crushed that in recent weeks, but last week was just 42 yards on 12 carries. It was a disappointment last week, especially once Micah Johnson was out and switched over to the offense line. He didn't get it done. I'm going to take the over still. I know this is a really good Riders defensive line, but Oliveira is too talented to have two down games in a row. And with, maybe a little more pressure on Caleros, I think you got to give it to Brady to get the ball going here.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good choice, and especially you never know with this Rider offensive line. You might see 57 jersey come back out this week. And it ain't going to be Brendan Labatt. I think it'll probably end up being Mike Johnson again. So hopefully it doesn't happen. But yeah, it's not going to be pretty. I would not touch a Rider running back with a 50-foot pole right now. What he'll get.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about Hickson before, but I just feel like he doesn't get enough passing work to make it interesting for me, fantasy-wise, to put in Frankie Hickson right now. All right.
I'm amazed how the Riders do not use the hitch screen as much. Like, they don't at all use the screen.
No, they really don't. All right, final game of the week. Could be a bit of a long one here tonight as we an hour and 15 minutes in are getting into our final game. I'm having fun. I hope you're having fun.
Oh, yeah.
I hope the chat's having fun. We're having a good time here so far. And we get to talk about the Battle of Alberta round 2. And this is for 4th place in the West Division between the Calgary Stampeders and the Edmonton Elks. This one in Edmonton. The Elks beat the Stampeders. What was the score? Let me find it. 35-20 on Monday, and just 5 days later, they're back playing once again. The big storyline in that game was McLeod Bethel Thompson, 486 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Tevin Jones with 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. Gittins with 115, Lewis with 112, Dylan Mitchell with 25. It was the 3-headed monster, it seemed, for the Elks passing game, and a Stamps team that just kind of looked uninspired for the most part, and we're still hanging around, and then a couple of costly mistakes, and the Elks kind of stormed away late in that one. Where are you at on these two teams right now?
Well, I think it's the teams of 2 different directions all of a sudden. You know what I heard this week that I thought was absolutely amazing over on the X-Land? Edmonton is considered a Grey Cup contender all of a sudden. I haven't heard those words for a very, very long time. I mean, and you know what? I could make the case for it. I mean, they got 2 solid quarterbacks with them. If one gets hurt, the other one goes in. They'll be fine. Trey Ford's now healthy, apparently. Tevin Jones looks like the number 3 receiver in the league, maybe not the number 6 anymore. Eugene Lewis looks great. Dylan Mitchell Dylan Mitchell, I don't know what to say on him. But Curly Gittins Jr., I mean, he's been awesome. The Elks are showing more than one way to win a game. And last week they didn't have to do it with their running game. I mean, Javon Leake didn't have to go crazy. Kevin Brown didn't go nuts. They didn't have to bring in Rankin any. Really, I don't even know if Rankin even played, actually.
Rankin was in there. They said all 3 running backs would get reps, but he didn't get any.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, though, but the Edmonton Elks are showing that they can win games in different ways and different styles now versus the first couple games they won, it was all about the run. Now, McCall Bethel Thompson's firing the ball real well. Obviously, he's got great confidence with Curly Gittins Jr. Apparently now with Tevin Jones, I mean, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. One was a blown play that Tevin Jones got a pile of yards on. But nevertheless,
that was wild.
That was crazy. That guy just got thrown right into the sidelines. Made me smile. Anyways, their offensive line has played way better. Their defense, I mean, Lucas Purifoy's getting interceptions again. You look at, again, Moncrief looks like a young man all of a sudden out there. He's been playing real well. Derek Moncrief, that is. Overall, this Edmonton Elks team looks like a completely different team than the uninspired kind of just dare to play a game to not get fined, essentially, almost like the Marshawn Lynch style when Chris Jones was there. They seem to really be playing well under Darius Jackson. G. Royce Simon has got the guys he wants, I think, right now. Everything looks real rosy right now. Plus, they're also fixing up Commonwealth Stadium eventually, apparently.
Apparently, because both these teams are in the bid for the 2026 Grey Cup, I believe. Edmonton and Calgary. So
if they want to do this right, winner of this game gets the Grey Cup in 2026.
I think that's how you do it. Yeah, 4th place in the West earns you 2020 Cup. That's how this works. On Edmonton, I'm going to argue that they've had it right all along, and they were a good football team. It's the same team for the most part. I mean, notable subtraction, Chris Jones. And his maybe coaching style there, and maybe they just needed a leader like Darius Jackson to push them over the edge. It does seem like there was an offensive shift when Jackson took over, where it was more emphasis on the run game, and now it's not just one guy in the run game. You can have Javon Leake had 53 yards on 10 carries, Kevin Brown had 35 on 9 carries. Like, this week was a dual back system, better than any we've really seen in the CFL. In a while, and it's a 3-headed monster there, and it opens things up for the passing game. And unless McLeod Bethel Thompson really drives off the deep end performance-wise here or gets injured, I hate to say it, Trey Ford's not getting back in the lineup here for the Edmonton Elks. I think you have to ride with Bethel Thompson, and he was the guy you brought in at the start of the year to perform, and he struggled early on. Going to Ford was the right move. They should have done it earlier. But since he's come back in, they've continued to win, or except for that one game against Montreal where they came close there as well. So, I think MBT's the guy right now. I think the offense is rolling on all cylinders here for the Elks. And if you want to take a brief second to walk down memory lane with me and go back to preseason episode where we ranked our top wide receivers in the CFL, I want to mention number 6 on my list, Tevin Jones, because I had him ranked there. I picked him in our fantasy draft. I was so high on him this year when he signed in Montreal. Thought he was going to take the Austin Mack spot. He got released. We all laughed. I laughed at myself. You laughed at me. We all laughed together.
We all had a good laugh.
We all had a good laugh about it. He signs in Edmonton, doesn't get in the lineup for a while, and now Tevin Jones is on his way up the ranks. And I think if he continues the pace that he's on, could make his way into the top 10 receivers in the CFL conversation by year's end, despite only playing half the season. Shout out to Tevin Jones. Let's talk about the Calgary side here a little bit. Quarterback controversy time. I don't know what the controversy is, but Jake Maier is... We talked about him earlier this year as being better than we thought, but has been underwhelming at times. And this week, nonetheless, in the biggest game of the year, 18 days of rest between games for him. He throws 4 picks, and they lose 35-20 here against their division rival. I don't know where you go at quarterback if you're the Stamps, but what do you do here if you're Calgary?
Well, I mean, Matthew Schultz, I don't think he's ready to go as far as I know. Has been injured. I mean, Tommy Stevens, they wouldn't even bring him in to kind of be in relief of Jake Maier. They brought in Eric, started with a B. I can't remember the last name.
Logan Bonner is their current backup.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what you do here. I think you just kind of go up to Jake. You got to go back with Jake Maier. He gives you, I think, you're still your best chance to win. Did he have a bad game last week? Yeah, he had a pretty bad game last week. Is he going to have another one? Well, who knows? But at the moment, he does have a little bit more chemistry with some of the receivers. I mean, he looked like he had a great game with Reggie Bagleton, who had quite a few yards and had some movement and everything else. He does have a little bit of chemistry with Mark M. Michel. I think he's probably a good one as well. And he also does have a little bit with Jalen Philpott. I think he's also probably a good. Those 3 receivers are pretty much what what Calgary needs to get going, I think. One guy though that I want to mention in this, and I thought he had a really good game, but just wasn't, and probably was not really looked at very much. Kylan Hill of the Calgary Stampeders. There's another reason why Mike always says running backs are a dime a dozen. I mean, they had Dedrick Mills. He left. They've got Logan. He's there, but we don't know if we're comfortable. They put in Kylan Hill, who nobody's ever heard of ever, and he's really good. He's got the kind of trucking ability. He can run over guys if he needs to. He doesn't fear contact. I watched him the one play. Was on a 10-yard run. And instead of just going off to the sidelines and, just going out, he decides to go and run square into an Edmonton Elk. And that was the funniest thing I thought I'd seen for a while. I laughed way harder than I should have about that. But honestly, Kylan Hill looks really good. And I think maybe they got at least a running back now to take some pressure off of Jake Maier.
And it frees up Peyton Logan to focus on returns. And he had that massive punt return touchdown, I think it was, in this game that kind of put them back into it for a little bit there. So, yeah, they can run with Kylan Hill as their starter at running back and free Logan back to the role he was kind of brought in for, and still have him spell in here and there throughout the offense. I think that is helpful for the Stamps there as well. I don't know. I think you have to stick with Jake Maier. I don't think you can go Logan Bonner's direction. Tommy Stevens, for the same reasons, I don't think Chris Strebler is a long-term starter. He's more that, great rushing quarterback. I haven't seen passing ability from him. You're still in it, Calgary. And like you win this week, and you're potentially 1 point back of the Riders if they lose. So 2 points back of the Bombers if they lose. Like everybody's still in it in the West Division, so nobody can throw in the towel and go to an unproven quarterback. I don't think that's something you can do at this point in time. But this team has to get a little more consistent, and they definitely did not look that part after 18 days of rest this week. Fantasy picks for this game. Some interesting options. I think I've got at least one or two from this game that I'll have on my roster, but let's go to you first. I like this kind of format. Tell us what you got.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just mentioned him about 2 minutes ago. Kylan Hill, reasonable running back for price, 3,500. But again, Edmonton still is a little bit susceptible to that run game. I thought they were getting a little better in this. They still can get run on a little bit. So I do like Hill in this game for the Stampeders. And then I do have two Edmonton Elks as well. I did take McLeod Bethel Thompson this week. Last week was amazing. I don't expect the same, but I do expect a pretty good game out of Bethel Thompson. I think that he has some sort of ability to read that secondary a little bit better of Calgary's. Damari Houston looked very human out there last game, and it seemed like Bethel Thompson was able to get Curly Gittens Jr. or Tevin Jones just to make those plays in front of Houston, and it worked real well for the Edmonton Elks. So I expect kind of the same again, maybe even better. Who knows? They're at home. They're supposed to be home field advantage, so let's see if it helps them.
Has the other home field advantage ever been a thing in Edmonton?
For a long time, anyways. It wasn't one time, but I remember people always telling me, and again, 1989, we're going into Edmonton. It's going to be a tough one for the Rough Riders. Yeah, about that. Anyways, you know what? Honestly, though, Commonwealth Stadium, if that stadium is rocking and noisy, oh yeah, that's a big advantage for the Edmonton Elks. But fans, if you're an Edmonton Elks fan, go out and watch a game. They're actually looking pretty good. Nevertheless, there's my plug for the Edmonton Elks this week. You're welcome. I'll expect my payment in the mail. The other guy I've got is Curly Gittens Jr. I think he's had quite a few consistently good games. I wanted to take Tevin Jones, but I don't know if he knows the playbook completely yet. Just had to throw that out there.
All he needs to do is pick up a fumble and run 80 yards.
I'm sure that he probably, while he was running that 80 yards, he was looking over at Craig Dickinson and saying, I know the playbook now. Nevertheless, I'm going to go with Curly Gittens Jr. Something with him and McLeod Bethel Thompson. They know where each other are at all times. It's kind of like some of the other famous receiving cores in the CFL from back in the day, whether it was Flutie and Flutie or whether it was G. Royce Simon and Dave Dickinson back in the day. There was all those guys that they always knew where one guy was. Durant and Dressler back in the day. They always knew where one of the other guy was. So it seems like Gittens Jr. and Bethel Thompson have that kind of connection. So that's why I'm going with both of those guys this week as well.
Well, I liked what you said about Kylan Hill so much that as Adam was speaking, I put the transaction in for our private fantasy league to drop Frankie Hickson and add Kylan Hill to my roster because, Frankie Hickson, we talked about not getting those dump passes. Kylan Hill was involved this week in the passing game. He had 5 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown through the air. He also is not on bye week next week when there are a bunch of guys on bye. So I picked Kylan Hill up. Thanks for talking me into it. Adam's shaking his head and cursing.
Just because he knows that a certain fantasy leader also doesn't have a running back next week, essentially.
Well, got Carey, yeah.
No, not Carey. Carey's on bye next week, isn't he?
No, the Argos aren't on bye next week. I think it's Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Saskatchewan. 3 teams on bye next week. So fantasy gets more interesting. Stay tuned for next week's preview show.
Oh, I've only got 2 out of my 3 receiver or running backs on bye. Great.
Yeah, there you go. For me, for other options in this game, yeah, Kylan Hill may be in consideration. Edmonton, I'm kind of staying away from the running backs right now because I don't know what they're doing with the room. Right? They say all three are getting reps. Rankin didn't get any. Leak got 10 rushes. Brown got 9. If they're going to split it 50-50, that's not going to be valuable enough for me for fantasy, I think, compared to some other options. At wide receiver, Tevin Jones. I love Tevin Jones. I'll say the same thing about Edmonton that I said earlier this year, that Curly Gittens Jr. is the guy if you want the safe floor of a possession receiver that's typically not going to break a big one for you, that might get a lot of touchdowns, that might get a lot of targets, but his yardage is going to be somewhere in the 50s range. And that's worked for him to kind of hover around that top 10 finish in a lot of weeks. But Tevin Jones is the big play make or break guy that we thought Dylan Mitchell was going to be for them this year. If you look at Tevin Jones' stat lines in every game, like this year it was this week it was 5 catches for 208 yards. It was 5 catches for 67, 6 catches for 123, 3 catches for 123. Big play guy, Tevin Jones is, and so it's a little more risky, but I think it's worth the boom or the bust play there between them. And on the Calgary side, Reggie Begelton continues to find a way to be consistent. 7 catches, 118 yards for him last week, 18.8 fantasy points. Was the wide receiver 7 last week, and just scrolling through my stats sheets that are all out of order based on being behind. That is now 4 top 10 finishes in the last 6 weeks for Reggie Begelton. He's been pretty consistent regardless of the up and down quarterback play from Jake Mayer. So I currently have him in my lineup as well. Did you talk about McLeod Bethel-Thompson at all? I know you were hemming and hawing about him before the game.
No, I talked about him a little bit there. I think he's my quarterback for this week. And again, I had one of 3 that I was going to pick. It was either going to be McLeod Bethel-Thompson, it was either going to be Chad Kelly, or it was going to be Nathan Rourke. Rourke, I said because Montreal, no, because I think their offensive line and our defensive line and linebacking core is going to be strong. Chad Kelly, I said no, namely because I think Ottawa is going to make him a little bit tough, and I don't like his receiving options, although he still could be an option in this one. Right now, I like how McLeod Bethel-Thompson is either getting the ball off to the running back to make a safe play, or he's making passes, and he's making very nice passes to 4 or 5 of his receivers right now, and he's very confident throwing all those footballs to his receiving core. So I'm probably going to end up picking McLeod Bethel-Thompson. I think that the Calgary secondary is probably the weakest of the 3 teams that's playing this week for those 3 quarterback options. So that's why I'm aiming for McLeod Bethel-Thompson.
I like it. Definitely a guy in consideration there. As we move on to our betting picks for this game, the Elks and the home team 3-point favorites there. Over/under is at 51. What are you? Or I guess it's my turn to go first on this one because you went first last time. I'm gonna just break all my rules this week on the home series. I didn't do it for Winnipeg, Saskatchewan. I'm not gonna do it on this one because I don't trust Calgary on the road. And I think Edmonton is just trending so well in the right direction here that I am going to take the Elks to sweep the Battle of Alberta here, and I'm going to take Edmonton on that one. And I'm going to take over 51 because Edmonton is the highest scoring offense in the CFL so far this year. I'm just pulling up the point totals to double check how many points are they scoring points for. They're averaging 29 points a game. If they put that up, Calgary needs 22. They average 24 on the year. So these teams combined are averaging over this total. If my math is correct, give me the over on this one. What do you got?
I'm looking at this one here, and I'm going to say probably it's going to be the Edmonton Elks. They've got momentum behind them finally, and that's a funny thing to play with, which I know Edmonton hasn't been used to this for a while, but they look really good. Yeah, give me the Edmonton Elks at -3. I am going to take the over on this one as well. Not maybe because I think Calgary's going to get a lot of points, but I sure think Edmonton might. So yeah, give me Edmonton, give me the over, and let's see what the coin tells us today. I got the coin taking the Calgary Stampeders. It just
All
doesn't
right.
want to agree with me today.
Apparently not. Apparently not. All right. Well, that is our player props on this game. You got any on this one?
Yeah, this one here is weird because right now I'm looking in the back of where we get our props. They only have for the Calgary Stampeders receiving yards and rushing yards. They've only got Calgary stuff. They don't have anybody else's stuff, like Edmonton guys. They got a pretty interesting one here, though. And this is kind of a weird one. I'm going to take it because it's just different. Touchdown scores. I am going to go with the Edmonton Elks. The Edmonton Elks defense at plus 420. Pretty good payout for getting one touchdown. Just because it's different, and boy, they've been a little bit of ball hawks lately. They're going to get a touchdown this time. So let's go with plus 420 for the Elks to get a touchdown.
I like it. So you said no Edmonton receiver props available there.
I've been looking here for props right now for passing receiving yards. You got Reggie Bagleton at 74.5 is the line.
I'll take the over on that. I think Bagleton has been on fire lately. I would go over on Bagleton for that. I think they have to keep giving him 10 targets a game if they want to get this offense turned around.
And another one here that you may want to take a look at is Mark and Michelle. 45.5 is the line.
The line on Bagleton was 74.5, I think you said, and 40 something on Michelle. I would take the under probably almost on that. I feel like he's just not getting the number of targets that he should be for Michelle because they do spread it around a whole ton. And I know he's been hovering around that 40, 50 range a lot this season. Trey took Edmonton and the over, so agreeing with both of us there. And the coin is the one outlier, which means Calgary is probably going to win this game.
Congratulations, Calgary, on your victory.
Yeah, there we go. As we get into wrapping things up today, a bit of a long one, but lots to talk about, and we made it through. Thursday nights every week the rest of the season we'll be here. It'll mainly be Adam and I, at least for the next little while. So we'll be back again next week reviewing week 15 in the CFL. We'll do all the same fun things we did tonight. In the meantime, we will have our coming back this week. No long weekend this week, so Mike and I should be back with the Discord call-in show and weekly recap coming on Monday. So you can join us in the Discord. The link's in the episode description. It's free to join us there. We usually record that either on the commute to work in the morning or the commute home from work afterwards for me, depending on what time works out best between Mike and I. We record our weekly recap and we take your comments and questions live in the Discord there. So join us in there this Monday, and you can catch the audio feed for that after the fact over on all the audio platforms also. No video available for that one. And yes, if anybody's wondering or concerned, it is all hands-free devices for myself in the vehicle because road safety first. So check that out. Go back, check out the NFL Fantasy Draft if that's something that interests you. That's on all of our platforms now from last night. That was a lot of fun. Thanks to everybody who's joining us in on that this year. And then, like I said, we'll be back again next Thursday. In the meantime, you can follow us on social media at CF Countdown Pod on Twitter, facebook.com/CF Countdown Pod as well. Check out all the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network at CF Pod Network on Twitter, and the Alternative Football Network at the official AFN on Twitter or alternativefootballnetwork.com. Adam, what you all got going on these days?
Well, lots of farming stuff, obviously. It's that time of year. Also, again, I'm watching some NFL stuff here. Don't want to spoil anybody that has just been tuning into us exclusively because, we are the big deal here for the football for the night. But a certain team in red might be leading. Yes, Throwing it out there.
So you say you don't want to spoil anything, and then only one of the teams is wearing red tonight. Like,
Well, I mean, might be leading. Didn't say they are leading.
oh yeah,
Maybe I'm messing with you. Maybe they're not leading. Who knows?
And look, if you want to watch football content where you can guarantee Taylor Swift won't show up, watch this podcast instead of.
I can guarantee that. Yeah, that's
I can guarantee she will not be here. So,
and if she does, well,
that is an interesting turn of events for the podcast.
Yep. You know what? We don't get to do any CFL real interviews with anybody, but for some reason, Taylor Swift showed up. That'd be just great.
Yeah, anyway, before performing the halftime show with the Wiggles, right? Shout out CFL Reddit for that one. So check out all of Adam's stuff. Yep. I'm out of it. I was looking at too many things at once. Did you plug your social media handles already?
Yeah, no, not yet, but that's fine. It's Adam Stewart 1 over on the X. If you want to check out Farmer in Sask over on the Instagram, check out some farm photos. That's pretty much what's up there right now. It's not quite hockey season, so we don't have to worry about senior hockey stuff. But when that starts up, of course, this is the official, unofficial podcast of the Theodore Buffaloes. So
you know it, that we are. All right. You can find me on Twitter at CooperTrooper42 if you want to follow an account that doesn't really tweet much. You can find Mike on Twitter at Mike Garrell. Trey is on Twitter. Handle has changed. I believe Trey MB Harness is the current handle for Trey. If you want to catch up with him there while he's away from the show for the next little bit. And I mentioned to check out the Discord already. I think we covered all our bases there. Thanks to those who joined us in the chat, whether you're here up in Canada or out in North Carolina or across the world anywhere. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments in the chat. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, help us grow the show. We always appreciate that. I'm going to try to end the stream here shortly and see if the buttons work. If not, you will see the closing music on a loop, and feel free to exit at any point. But on behalf of Adam Stewart, I'm Ryan Coop saying thank you for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.